Bombshell Brunches, where your hosts Raquel Rudenberg and Christina Lau sip and spill with badass babes every Tuesday morning.
It is
Tuesday.
Good job. That was the worst. Okay.
I think that one took the cake.
Yeah,
I think that one
did.
won.
It probably did. Okay, do you want to go first? Shall I go first this time? Learning, loving,
Yeah,
loathing.
you go first.
Okay. Hi, babeses. It's nice to see you on this very early Tuesday morning. Welcome. My learning right now is learning how to do what I can. And I'm so excited to introduce you to our guest, but I think that was a very pertinent point for me. Was I got overwhelmed in the last couple of months, and now I'm learning how to just take the small steps that I can. And that's a really big part of the podcast is not having all the steps laid out, but just taking the next one. I am loathing my lack of control, of perceived control. And I think that's another thing that comes up in the talk, but I'm loathing the fact that I feel so ungrounded right now. I know it's necessary, but I'm feeling it. So if anyone else is having those kinds of feelings, then you're not alone. You're not alone. But you know what I'm loving the most right now is our podcast. And I know that sounds squishy, but the thing that I'm loving is that, Raquel and I did this because we would have brunch with some of our favorite people and people that we didn't know who inspired us from afar. We physically had those brunches and we always left better people. And one of the things that has really taken me through 2020 that I really love is our little podcast, because all of our guests, we learn such valuable lessons that we didn't know that we were going to have. So those are my 3 this week.
Oh, those are really good.
You're sorry that I went
Dang
first, aren't you?
I am. Okay, so I am learning to let go. Letting go is really hard, but I'm learning to do it, and I have been successfully doing it, and it's been really, really cathartic. Like, it just feels so good. I feel like a whole different person, or a better person. And I'm loving that as I do that, I'm finding room for more love and positivity and all of these things that I thought didn't really bother me, but I was still kind of holding on to. They weren't daily things. They were just kind of there to raise their ugly heads every once in a while. Mm-hmm. Those are gone now, and it really has like opened me up to be a squishier, more me kind of person. So I'm kind of squishy today too.
Squishy.
Yeah. I'm leaning into it. Into the happiness, into the love, and all of that. I don't have a ton of loathing, but I would say the one thing that I'm a little loathing of is that I can't go to my campus. Super nerdy of me, but I am dying to go into the actual school that I'm studying, and I can't because we're in full-on lockdown, and that's a little bit of loathing.
Okay.
If I was to go for any kind of loathing, that's kind of a loathing. But today I wanted to tell you guys who we have on. So it's actually my cousin Sarah. We've brought her on, and I'm so excited to introduce you all to her. She's definitely been an inspiration for me throughout my life, and she's totally gonna feel like that's super squishy because I never told her that. But Sarah has lived her life with CF, which is short for cystic fibrosis. And that has basically, you'll hear more about it, what it is and everything in the episode, but it's got some pretty major differences in your life when you're living with it. And it is a genetic disease. And so that was a big thing for her to live her life with, but she didn't let it hold her down. So even though she had that, she continued to travel across the world, modeling, doing things that most people have only dreamed of. And then even as her health started to deteriorate a lot further, and when she had very little energy left, she still was doing such amazing things for her community. So things like starting an online community, doing documentaries, like you name it, she's doing a photography project that has chronicled her for over 10 years through the good, the bad, and the ugly.
And
And
I think interesting thing about Sarah, because you're very subjective about this is a family member of yours, but Sarah won't tell you any of the things that she did as if she's done them. She tells you in such a modest way. But like you were saying to me, Raquel, like, oh, she started that online community. She just talks about it existing. She was a Playboy cover model, right? She met that photographer that she's working with through doing those cover magazine shoots. She's traveled to so many continents around the world doing her modeling, not letting things and then not letting things get to her, and then having a double lung transplant while having a documentary made about her and doing multiple radio interviews. This person is a super badass. And I think that what's so interesting, to see in her personality is that she doesn't highlight any of those things as her own. She embraces the world that has happened around her. And I think we wanted to give credit to someone who so joyously lives through their life and creates community and positivity and shows people what is possible.
yeah, I think that's the clincher. She's showing people, which
Mm-hmm.
is, yeah, I think that's really it. So, anyways, without further ado, I think that was a perfect wrap up. Um, Sarah. Good morning, everybody. We have Sarah here with us today. Sarah has a gypsy heart and has lived and worked and modeled all over the world, including in Europe, Africa, and Australia. She has been a Playmate, gracing the pages of Playboy in both 2008 and 2013, and has lived a massive life while living with cystic fibrosis. Everybody, please welcome Sarah.
Hello.
Hello, Sarah.
Hi.
She also happens to be my cousin, so you know.
Hi, Giselle. Very proud of the fact.
Well,
I'm
Sarah, we're so excited to have you. We
I'm
have
excited
like,
to be here.
oh, thanks. We
Very.
do. I like it when we bring in the family, uh,
Yeah,
because Raquel then gets to ask all these questions that you can only really ask your family,
that's
Uh,
true.
and with your story, it's unbelievable. Like it really is. It's unbelievable, and it's also quite often really underrepresented.
Yeah.
So what I love in the few minutes that we had before we started was just how joyful you are, how positive you are, how easily you laugh. I think you and Raquel definitely, this is definitely a family trait here.
Yeah, I think so.
This is just going to be a podcast of laughter, which I think
Oh,
everyone
cool.
needs right now.
Yeah, could well be. Yeah.
So first off, I'm going to jump in and just ask you to explain cystic fibrosis, because a lot of people don't know what it is. They don't know how it's caused. They don't know where it came from. They don't know what the symptoms are. They don't know, So give us a little snapshot, if you would.
Yeah, it's a bit of a complicated disease, but to say it briefly, it's hereditary. It's been a while that I've explained this in English. I'm Dutch.
Hereditary. Yeah, it's genetic.
Hereditary, yes. So your parents have to be a carrier of the gene or have to condition themselves. And then when they get a kid, there is a certain chance, depending on who is a carrier and all that, of the kid getting cystic fibrosis. And it's basically the basis of the whole thing is that the mucus is thicker and stickier, and that mainly presents itself in the lungs and the digestive system, but also sometimes the liver or the sinuses or anywhere in the body.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a progressive disease as well. So I just saw before. I'm sorry. I just saw before that the average age for a newborn with CF now is about 45 to 50 years old. But when I was
Wow.
born, that was about 25 to 30, I believe. So it's improved a lot.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
a big leap in a lifetime. That's
Yes,
a
it definitely
that's
is.
that's 2 decades in a lifetime. So,
Yeah.
that's
A lot of
really,
years.
oh, sorry, 12 years. Right. My math is not great.
Oh no, I was just gonna go with it. Yeah. No, but
uh,
it is a lot of time in a pretty short amount of years, really.
Like
yeah.
science years, it's pretty
Yeah,
amazing
exactly.
how far they've come.
Yeah.
So tell me what that looks like to you on a daily basis. Like, what can you share about it so that other people who aren't going through it, like, how has that been growing up?
I guess it really depends how you're raised as well. My parents chose to be very honest about everything, so I knew as a kid what was going on, what my chances possibly could be,
Mm-hmm.
um, why I had a cough all the time, why I had to take all the medicines I needed to take. Whenever I had questions, they were answered in an honest way. But they also raised me as a very normal kid. So I did all the stuff that other kids did as well. I was lucky enough to be pretty healthy until I guess well, I was always sick. Like there was always something different.
Mm-hmm.
But then it didn't really influence my life until my early teens, I suppose. And the way I noticed that was, well, obviously the cough was always there. Lung function was always going backwards a little bit over time. More medicines came in, more hospital visits. Food has always been a massive issue, which I think is for a lot of CF patients. Uh, and well, the last few years obviously have been the most extreme because the older you get, the sicker you get, and this is a very different progress for everyone. I know people my age with this condition who are a lot healthier, and I know other people who died when they were 10 years old. So it's very different per person.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah.
You talked about food. Can you explain that further? Like what's the issues with food?
Um, I think it's well, first of all, there's just no appetite, and whether that is from, if you have the flu, for example, you just don't feel like eating. So that's one theory that because of, I'll just say, our bodies are so sick, there's so much energy going to the other organs and to fighting infections and to, yeah, everything that's going on in your body all the time. So you just don't feel like eating. And then also, the sicker you get, the more short of breath you get. It literally just becomes an extra obstacle. It stands in the
Mm,
way for air. And the energy of chewing and processing and
it's
like
just
you
too
process,
much.
it's just too much. Yeah, you just,
Mhm. Mhm.
Do you live on smoothies?
I have absolutely. I actually I actually once made a little vlog in which I have a new antibiotic course, and it made me so nauseous, and I was already losing so much weight. And I actually said in the video, I'm gonna buy a blender today because this is it. I'm just gonna live on smoothies. It helped a lot back then. Yeah.
Smoothie life.
Yeah.
All the protein powder.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
Protein powder, the peanut butter, everything.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I bet you're like the master of smoothie making now.
Yes, well, to be fair, these days I enjoy food, so it's been a while because
Oh,
now it's
good.
just a waste of filling up.
Because I didn't even introduce that. So Sarah has now had a double lung transplant, which has put her in a very different position than she was before. I mean, I think there's still, you're not quite the normalest normal, but
Just
you're
that.
well on your way.
Yeah, almost there.
We're almost there. But we can get into that later. So, can we talk a little bit about growing up? I know when you were younger, they still had, and you and I have talked about this in the past as well, but they still had get-togethers. I think like once a year you would have like I think it's a week long or something
Yeah.
like that, and you would get together with other kids who have cystic fibrosis, and then eventually they found out that that was not good for anyone who has cystic fibrosis to be with others. So can you talk a little bit about that, why they were good for you then on a more like mental health standpoint, and yeah, just dive into that a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. No, that's true what you're saying. We used to have, yeah, we call them summer camps. It sounds a little lame, but they were awesome.
Love summer
And
camps.
yeah, I think I must have been around 10 years old when my parents told me about that first. That was one of the things they actually didn't open up to me straight away about, because I guess they weren't sure what I would see in those weeks. Because of course I had my health, but everyone else had their health, and there's pretty good big gaps, what I said before, in how everyone's doing. But as soon as they told me about it, I was like, yes, I want to go, because I really hadn't met anyone else with CF until then. I mean, maybe walk past someone in a hospital visiting my doctor, but that's it, you know? You don't make a connection with someone like that. Um, so I went for the first time when I was 10 years old. It was really nice. It did stand out to me that I was one of the healthier kids then. So the others were doing a lot more treatments. And, you know, I remember not being allowed in rooms sometimes, like playing football with the handful of other healthy-ish kids while the others were trying to clear out their lungs and inhaling stuff and all that. But it was very eye-opening in that way, but it was also, even if I wasn't as sick as so many of the kids back then, there was a lot of recognizing life as well, what my normal or healthy friends didn't have. So it was really good in that way. And I think I went 3 or 4 times in total, maybe the last time when I was 14, I think. And yeah, I definitely made friends for life. One of my very best friends is who I met there. The thing is, though, they discovered that there's cross infection from CF patient to CF patient. So we transfer certain bacteria to each other, which are not good to get. And that's why all the physical contact came to a full stop in hospitals, in camps, in meetings, everywhere. So that changed a lot.
So they had to shut it down, the whole
Yeah,
thing, or?
the whole thing, everywhere, through the whole world. I think we were one of the later countries, but it all happened in a couple of years. Like the results came out of this research that had been going on for a few years, and that was that. No more meetings. And the hospital visits became different. The hospital stays became different. You got your own room instead of share one, which sometimes can be great, sometimes can be lonely.
Yeah.
So yeah, a lot changed with that.
And what was
Isn't there a movie about that?
Oh,
yes, quite recently. I think it's 5 feet apart.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's what.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what's that about as well.
Yeah. Sorry, Christina, go ahead.
No problem. I was going to ask actually, the stints in hospital for you, were they weeks at a time? Were they days at a time? Like, I don't know anything about what the treatment looks like, and I know that you said it does vary.
Yeah. Yeah, it is, you know, it's, I think probably every answer concerning this disease is it's always different. So I've had hospital stays of 1 or a couple of days, and then I've had hospital stays of weeks or a month, or so it was very different. But it was obvious that the sicker I got, the longer the stays became.
Okay, so I want to jump in there, because one of the things that really just strikes me is, and please forgive me for drawing comparisons, but when we think of our audience and we think about what we've gone through in 2020 as individuals, as humans, when I think about friends of mine and people that I know that have systemic diseases, that have afflictions that grip them on a daily basis, mental health, physical health, you know, there's such a transferability. But with you in particular, there's this understanding that you are constantly going to have to rearrange your life. And I think that what I love is looking at how much you've been able to do that. And I want to talk about that in terms of, you know, so many people feel so powerless. And my career coach and I like to joke about me having my favorite thing being my perception of control over anything. And I'm still working on it, Larry. But my point is, I'd love to hear how you manage that. Like as a teenager growing into who you are today, you've had to make some pretty strong decisions in that regard. So can you tell me, you realize all these things are starting to break down, you're going to need to go into hospital. How did you shift your mindset to be able to be okay with that?
Yeah, that's a good question. In one way, it happens, right? Like you're not going to stop it. So I was lucky enough to not really have serious hospital stays until I was 16 years old. So, and those first few times were definitely also the hardest in trying to recognize when it was time to call or turn myself in, or I've had some real serious chats with my doctors about that.
You waited too long.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the more you wait, the longer you wait, the harder it is to get back up, right?
Right.
And the more possible permanent damage you might do to yourself or your body's doing to yourself. So that was definitely a learning curve. And I mean, back then, for a long time, I thought that I didn't really got influenced by having CF when it came to future plans or lifestyle or things like that. But looking back, I mean, I'm pretty certain that it might have. But it did make that it was easier to adjust to things because I did not have a plan, to say it like that. I didn't know what I was gonna study or work or travel to, or I had not a certain vision for my future. So if life pulled me a certain direction, and that was where we were going. So if back then that part was probably not the hardest. That was more later in life when you're with your partner, it influences other people's lives. I found that the hardest thing. So it's really about communicating well, I guess, with the people around you, and maybe even making agreements on what to expect of each other when it does happen. Or a big thing was a few years ago we adopted a little dog. What happens with her, and what happens with yeah, my boyfriend has its own business. How does that go on? And just yeah. So the saying "it takes a village" is really sort of true, not just with raising a child, but also surrounding a sick person.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I also think that from a lens of just living a best version of your life, that sounds like a pretty awesome way of living, full stop. Like, having communication, having good communication, saying what happens to the dog. Like, these are important.
Yeah, we're all trying to get there, and she's just been living her whole life like this.
Yeah, and I think sometimes we go through the people that go through such incredible adversity tend to arrive at the way that we kind of should be living anyway, maybe a lot quicker. And so I love that. I think that it's really important for us to have agreements. That's really cool. And it's not cool, it's shit that you have to, just like it's shit that lawyers exist. Sorry, all the lawyers. But it happens. And it's good to have them. So I wanted to just because we can talk for days, but I want to ask you about the online community, because you talked about the camp shutting down, and then obviously my next question was going to be, well, can you switch it online, because we're all on Zoom? So for those who don't know much about cystic fibrosis, why is the online community so important? And I think apart from not cross-germing, tell me about that.
Cross-germing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, because it is not too common for people to have this disease, it's hard to find each other, right? So that's why I never met someone before this summer camp. So it is very important, I think, that you have a place somewhere, whether that's online or in real life, but that's online now, that it exists, and that if you would want to connect, that's where you can do that. And that's good for just chatting and recognizing certain aspects of your life that you can't recognize in healthy people, but also treatment-wise, or how do you do it? What do you get medicine-wise? And also, especially, how do you stand up for yourself? What do you do if you don't agree with one of your medical team members? Or there's so many aspects to all of this, even to do you even dare to buy your own home? And if so, what insurance will take you on? all those things. There's so
Mm-hmm.
many different aspects to it all. So it's, I think,
Mm,
super important that there is some place at least where you can find each other.
right. You know what that sounds like? It sounds like you're learning how to you're surviving by thriving. Like you're finding ways to uh, do what a lot of us should be doing to live our, like I said, like our live our best selves, like sharing resources, sharing
Yeah,
knowledge, and the fact that it's in this really under this very acute lens, this microscope, and there is a microcosm of a community. It
yeah,
seems pretty magnified and a very good lesson for a lot of us to, you know, especially Raquel and
yeah,
I, creating a community of people in our way as well, in our little way. So
yeah.
that's very cool.
Yeah, and in this case, we're sort of forced, I guess, to approach certain things in the most effective way or the most loving way or whatever works for whoever. And because you share this massive thing of your life, there's an instant connection often. And I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you don't have to be best friends with everyone, but it definitely helps in just being honest to each other and helping each other out. So that's great.
Mm-hmm.
I imagine there's an understanding that people who have cystic fibrosis have with each other that you just won't get if you're sorry if you're outside of that group. Like if you don't have that, there's just probably a certain understanding. Even we all have uncertain lives, but I think growing up and living knowing you have an uncertain life ahead of you is gotta put a different spin on it all. And so you probably meet other people who are more like-minded um,
Yeah, or at
than you would
least,
in regular community.
yeah. Yeah, and of course there's subgroups in this CF group. Some people
Mm-hmm.
might treat it really strongly in this way, and other people are much more like the YOLO approach, or so. But it's easier to find each other in that way, and it's just, yeah, I guess, um, more intense of a relationship in a shorter amount of time than it might normally take.
And I wanted to go back because you were talking about how things changed once you found a partner, like a life partner, and everything, of course, because all of a sudden you're thinking about someone else in a very strong way. Um, how did that, how was that for you? How was like finding a partner? Was it something that you had to kind of come to grips with? Was it a decision you had to make? Or was it just really like, yellow, I'm going for
Yeah.
it?
I used to have a big YOLO mindset, but that also meant that I didn't really take it too serious
Mm-hmm.
relationships at first. So I used to have boyfriends and dates, and I loved it all, but I never really thought about, oh, I'm going to stay with you for the rest of my life. And part of that was just maybe because of who I am, and part of that was also definitely because I knew I was getting sicker every year, and who knows how it's going to all turn out and what burden I'm putting on this person's life. So that was, yeah, definitely something to go through.
How did Shane is her fiance? How did he navigate that?
Honestly, he was great. He was very patient as well. He I think for him, obviously, we've talked a lot about it, and also afterwards, looking back, he sort of says, well, you hear that this person that you like and start to love has this horrible part in her life that we will have to live with, and um, he explains it as just making a decision. Do I care enough about this girl to just go for it? And if so, then that's that. And that's what he did pretty soon, actually. And
I know.
yeah,
He's lovely.
he honestly, he's gonna love hearing this back. But I mean,
Go, Shane.
yeah. No, but he really is one of the kindest and most honest hearts that I ever met. And he, yeah, if he loves someone, that's it for him. There's no question. So I've been very, very lucky meeting him. Even if I had more doubts about all of it being together than he did, I think. So that
I
was,
think that comes from a guilt though, doesn't it, as well,
oh
right? And
yes,
like you need to be pretty fucking awesome for someone to be. You know, don't take away the credit from yourself here for a second. Like, you know, that's a pretty big like self pat on the back.
Like, I found this partner that stayed with me.
Yeah, like I am amazing.
No, but also, you know, it's been great that when we met, which is already about oh God, what is it, 13 years ago?
That can't be.
Yeah, I think it must be. I think we met in 2007. Yeah. So I was it definitely affected my life back then, CF, but I was healthy enough to still travel and to still work and still party hard and do all the weird stuff. It just, I had to catch up once in a while, or I had to be off the face of the earth for a month here and there. But so it's been great that he did get to see that side of me as well, because who knows, I imagine it's a lot harder to find a partner that you really connect with on a level that you feel that you also are. Maybe you can't show it anymore as much if you are much sicker when you meet already. So, but that also means that he's been there for the whole painful decline. So it's double.
Yeah, and I think that leads well into the next part that I wanted to talk to you about. And we talked about it this weekend, but can you talk about what that period was like what it was like to be going through that before you had the lung transplant? And then can you talk to us a little bit? I loved hearing your story about your special day. So if we can talk about that a little bit, what it
Yeah.
was like before the last few years, and then kind of transitioning over into after you're a year out. So
Yeah, well, I guess things changed in an obvious way in 2012, I think, because the years before that, it definitely became a much bigger struggle to keep up with normal life, whatever normal is. um, and I noticed I was unhappier a lot of the time, and I thought it was just me not being happy. But then I realized that life actually has gotten so much harder. And it was just because I didn't have energy. I had so many lung infections. I was just sick all of the time, but not sick enough to actually stop life. And, so you keep going, but it's just, stuff is just hard. And I didn't really realize that yet, even if that sounds a bit dumb. If you're used to just keep going and it works out, why would you stop and take a moment and think, oh, maybe I'm actually sick?
Mm.
And so I sort of got that confronted with that fact in 2012 when one of my lungs collapsed and I just got so much sicker in not different ways. And my weight, like I said, had always been an issue, but then later that year, or maybe 2013, and those 2 years were just not the best. So I got a tube placed in my stomach for every night. I had tube feeding starting then. So it was just, and also we traveled a lot, Shane and I, for the previous years. That came to a full stop. I just had to live in the Netherlands and have a solid home and a medical team that I could contact easily. So that was a massive change. And then luckily, after about a year, I think, after I moved back here, Shane also got his visa and he wanted to live here as well with me. So that was a bonus.
Where is he from?
He's Australian.
Oh, okay.
Yes, yes. So that was also a little extra detail that could complicate things.
Yeah, the visa process. Yeah.
Yes, yes. And before that, of course, we had some talks where we want to live, maybe is it going to be somewhere in Europe and maybe the Netherlands or not, or Australia? But then it just became, okay, boom, you're in the Netherlands. That's it.
Right.
So that was a big thing. And then, yeah, it just, also for the first time in my life, I couldn't work. I tried some courses here and there, but mainly just online or at home. So it was just very different. I really tried very hard to think what I could still do. And sometimes that worked out and sometimes not. And there was a lot of disappointment in that way too, because I might have started a project that I'd be super excited about. And then suddenly I had another half year of horrible health and hospital visits. and the whole project was sort of, well, down the drain again. So that was
Mm-hmm.
just a lot of disappointment to deal with every time. And it's hard to not put that back on just your own. You start to think, gosh, I'm so bad at finishing stuff, or I'm just not motivated, or things like that. So that was confusing. And then, I got bad enough for my medical team to start telling me, actually during the night when I came into the hospital one time, I think it was like 11 at night, these bunch of doctors walk into my room and like, hey, Sarah, have you ever thought about lung transplant? No. Because
No.
I think when you have this condition, you know that there's going to be a point where your doctor will talk to you about this. And I knew it wasn't far away, but I didn't expect it at 11 o'clock at night in my room.
Yeah.
So that was the first real talk about that. And back then they just wanted to know what to do if I actually crashed right then and there. So I said, yeah, okay, yeah, I would have a lung transplant if that is what is going to happen to me, then yes, I would choose to go for that. But in my mind, I still doubted. I wasn't sure if I wanted to go through all of that because I've seen so many different outcomes of it as well with other CF patients that have gone through it. Some are amazing and others are really hard. So, and also I just, I struggled with the question, if someone else dies, then why should I continue to live? All the moral stuff came along as well, of course. And, but yeah, as I got sicker, the talk popped up a few more times, of course. And then in 2016, one of the things that I had a lot were lung bleeds. And they become normal. They don't have to be very dangerous. But then sometimes they were bigger, and that's just scary. So I came in with one of those one time in the first aid, and the emergency doctor, the first thing he said as he ran in was, I understand you're in the process of talking about lung transplant. I thought, oh God, just fix me first, and we'll talk about the rest later.
You again.
Who are you anyway? But it did play with my mind a bit, and I thought, okay, let's just have this orientation talk. Let's go to this other hospital, meet the team, talk about chances, options, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a good chat, but we all agreed that my decline wasn't just yet far enough. I wasn't really sick enough, and if I would have mentally been there fully, they might have proceeded with, you go through a screening to see if the rest of your body's healthy or strong enough and all that. But altogether, it just wasn't the time yet. So that was in 2016, and then in 2000.
And sorry, what are they looking at to see if you're like, at what stage, what kind of criteria are they looking at?
So obviously the condition of your lungs is a really big one. So it's about lung function, and also the prediction of how the next few years could be for you. So if you have a condition that's slow decline, they're less inclined to rush you through a process like that. But then CF can be, and especially for me at the time, it was very unstable and it could just jump back and forth in whatever way. So then they're a bit more just to have you on that waiting list so that you're ready to go if you need to be.
Yeah.
But then also mentally, this particular specialist that we had that talk with, then he was just making it so clear to us that mentally you have to be so ready for it because it's going to be so hard that you cannot doubt about going through it anymore. It's just got to be your only way, sort of thing. And I wasn't there yet. I was scared of it all. I was still in doubt if I wanted it for all the reasons. So we had the chat was really fun. But Shane and I walked out and we had lunch and we just sort of fell in this black hole. It was such a confrontation to what's still to come. Because, at the time it felt like, holy shit, we struggle as it is. And apparently this is still what's to come. Okay. So
you need to struggle more.
Yeah. Hooray. So that's, I actually had probably one of my best years that year. I wonder how much came from that talk. Maybe it was sort of like a, no, we're not doing that. And then after that, it really started just getting worse pretty quickly again. So in yeah, in 2018, I think, definitely, yeah, the decision was made to have another talk with one of the transplant centers. And at the start of 2019, I had my first meeting with them, and pretty soon after that, the follow up. Yeah, we call it a screening, which is 2 weeks of tests. Like, you stay in the hospital,
Wow.
and yeah, they run all the tests to see if there are any other hidden issues in your body, if you're strong enough to survive the surgery, if you're mentally okay, all those things. If your lungs are bad enough, of course, is a big thing as well. So, because lung transplant, it's, you don't know the outcome. Even if you survive, you don't know how you're going to survive and in what way. So it really is only done if it's the very last option. There's no other treatment available. So, but it was, from the moment that we actually started with that whole process, it just gave me so much hope. And there was no doubt in my mind anymore that this was the right thing to do, even if it was still just as uncertain as
Mm.
before. But it was just because I guess this first doctor from 2016 was right after all, which I did not believe at the time. But you do get to a point. I just got so sick that I just started to think, Jesus, is this it? Like, do I want to continue this way? And you're just you become ready to dive into the deep, whatever the outcome might be. So that's what happened.
And I think that sounds like, I mean, we don't have a ton more time, but like we said, we'll bring you back to have many more conversations. But one of the things that I'm like hearing is that, all these things are happening at every turn. You're like, okay, now this is happening. Now this is happening to me. But you've never
Yeah.
let it get in the way of you living the way that you can, to the fullest that you can. And like you said, just you highlighting that and saying, when I realized that this was the thing to do, I just did it. Like, I just went all the way in and did that. And I think that's a huge takeaway. And on that vein, I wanted to, as one of the final things that we can talk about with our audiences today, is, when you're thinking about the people listening to this podcast, and you're thinking about, everyone having their own version of their struggles, what was it that, you never let your life get in the way of your life?
Yeah.
if that makes sense. So,
Yeah.
how did you manage to go all the way in? How did you manage to become what is it, a play bunny?
Yeah, Playmate.
A playmate?
Playmate, yeah.
How did
There's bunnies and playmates. Yeah.
yeah, so how did you not apologize? Because I think that's a really big thing, is that, like you said, when you went into the relationship with Shane, there was a lot of, probably, like, I'm hearing, apologizing of, oh, I don't want to put this person through this, or
Mhm.
oh, I don't want to go for this big goal. What
Yeah.
did you do? Like, I think that that's what we can all learn from, is how to not apologize and be like, this is who I am and this is what I've got. And I think a lot of people need to know how to do that.
Yeah, well, it's definitely a very hard question, and it's taken me a long time to get there. And I think everyone tries always to live in that way in some,
Mm.
yeah. But it's just so, like, this is your life, and obviously there's people around you that you have to think about and that you love and that you want to give a good life as well. But this is your life, and you got to make decisions that work for you, and hopefully that matches the decisions of your partner or your family or whatever. And if it doesn't, then talk about it and find a middle way. But
Mm.
don't push your side completely out of it, because I have also done that, especially the first years of really getting sicker and having to live in the Netherlands without knowing what to do. And I was totally lost for a while. But the thing that got me back up and made me happier again is exactly, okay, I'm here for me. And that sounds selfish, and it still sounds hard, but it's what it is, right? And also, I think realizing that this is your life and figuring out what you want to do and what makes you happy often ends up involving making other people happy as well, out of really what you want. Plus, if I see Shane now the happiest when it comes to how he sees me, it's when I do the stuff that I love, because it makes me so happy and he sees that I'm doing okay. He doesn't have to worry. It's, so it's it's such a simple answer, but it's so hard to get there.
I think
And
that's,
also,
yeah.
yeah, so look at what you can do. I think that's maybe even a bigger one. There's always so much stuff that you can't do, but there's always something that you can still do, and that's so important.
I love
I
that.
think that's a good signal that you have the right partner
Yeah.
when you're with someone who is genuinely happy because you're doing something
Yes.
that makes you happy. That
Yeah.
is absolutely like hands down. If you need to checkbox something, I think that's
Yeah.
a really good
That's true.
checkbox
That's
to have.
To a
huge.
certain extent,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. And just before we kind of end off, can you talk about what it was like waking up um, after you had the transplant, how that felt, and then also, a year later, how you're feeling now? Because obviously you had to go through time to heal and everything. But How are you feeling now?
Now I'm good. I'm actually, I think since maybe a month and a half or so, life really starts to feel more normal again, and not just since transplant, but since a decade probably. Meeting people, well, online, or taking distance walks outside is what I do with my dog. It's just, it's not a thing anymore every time. It's more like, oh yeah, sure, let's do that, or let's quickly do this, and I'll cook in the meantime, and I'll blah, blah, blah. All these things used to be things before.
Like, let me
And
plan for the day because I'm
yes,
gonna.
yes, exactly. Shower. Okay,
Yeah.
that's it. No, but also, the hospital visits are becoming a little less frequent finally, because I don't think there's a normal in recovering after a lung transplant. But my year has also definitely not been normal. So there's been a lot of hospital visits. Even, it's very double. You start to feel this amazing improvement, and there everything is a milestone, especially the first couple of months. But then it's hard as well. There's a lot of medicines, there's a lot of side effects, there were quite a bit of hurdles on the road, and but now it sort of looks like things are, yeah, working out. So it's really cool. I'm starting actually pretty soon. I used to, in my normal hospital for just CF treatment, it was an academic hospital as well, so it was always full with students, and I used to walk past them with my IV pole at night trying to get my movement in for the day, and look at them, and it was their world and my world, and it was so far apart. Whereas I swear, as soon as I could walk around the hospital in my transplant center, I think maybe that was probably after 2 weeks or so, um, and it's also an academic center. So I saw the students, and there was actually a lecture hall was open, and I could sort of hear the teacher talking through, or the professor, or whatever these people are called. It's been a while that I've studied. And already then, like only 2 weeks out, my everything's still fresh, drains still out of my chest, everything. And I thought, yes, maybe I should go back to university. Like, the mind
Yes.
shift is incredible. It's incredible. Like, my whole perspective has changed. It's really a miracle. And also a massive part of it is the love of a stranger having saved your life. I carry that with me forever. It's given me such, like, it's just an everlasting extra boost that you carry around. It's very, very magical.
Wow. Oh,
Yeah.
I love that. I mean, yeah, that's amazing. You're walking around with someone else's love.
Is That's really what it is. It's you're walking around with someone else's organ, but really you're walking around with someone else's love. And I'm not the typical person who believes in afterlife or whatever. Like, I don't know what's next, but this feels like I'm carried in an extra bit of courage and love and all that. And I think that will last forever.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
You got like a big internal hug all the time.
Yeah.
Like just
Yeah.
these two other things are like, hello.
Yes. Honestly, whenever I do feel a little bit of anxiety pop up, I put my hand on my chest, and like the incision goes right across from left to right underneath my boobs and through the sternum, and put my hand on my chest, and it calms me down because I know that's there. Like, it's
Mm.
okay. You've gone through
How
that.
is how is that? How is having like is that something that you're proud of? Is that do you
Yeah,
have like
I'm not on, like, I don't, I don't care that the scar is there. And it's also I don't know if I'm proud of the scar, but I'm proud of the story. Like I used to not
Yeah.
like talking about having CF, but now, because of Corona, I haven't really been able to talk to a lot of strangers about the whole thing, which if you meet someone in a pub or whatever, but the few moments that it has come out unexpectedly to a stranger, like when I picked something up from someone's house after I bought it online or stuff like that, sometimes you have this nice connection and you end up chatting a bit. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to be honest. So, well, no, I don't work. I'm recovering from double lung transplant, and I feel this sort of pride with that, which can be
Yeah.
very.
You're a warrior. You got through it.
But I don't know if it's that or it's just. I mean, you do get so close to death, and in a way, it's well, gone through that. God, what else could happen? Bring it on. Sort of
You're
thing.
invincible now.
Yeah, it can feel like that. Honestly, might just be the drugs as well. Who knows?
Just don't question that. Don't question
No,
it.
right?
Just
feel
enjoy
like,
it.
yeah. Oh, amazing. Well, Sarah, how do people find you? I know that most of the things that your vlog, your blog, there's a documentary that you did that we didn't even touch on, but it's in Dutch, and so a lot of our English speaking friends might have a little struggle with it. Although I did find the trailer, it's called Out of Breath, and there are English subtitles on Vimeo. I did find that trailer. So I'm gonna challenge you to at some point get it subtitled by someone.
Yeah, maybe that
Raquel. Yeah, Raquel, just learn Dutch.
Yeah, just get fluent.
Just
exactly.
this out.
That can be your schooling.
But I'd love for us to be able to keep in touch. So, what's the best medium to find you?
Probably Instagram. I post little live updates now and then. It's called Coughing Adventurer, which probably I should change that name soon because I don't cough a whole lot anymore. So if anyone has suggestions, yeah, that's probably the best international platform to find me on.
Perfect. Amazing. Well, again, thank you so much. I'm going to go through the little 30 seconds of what we talked about today. You walked us through cystic fibrosis, it being a degenerative disease, and something that's hereditary. Your parents wonderfully being very honest with you, and then going through the summer camps, and then unfortunately not being able to do the summer camps, even though emotionally they were great, but physically you were germ throwing at each other without realizing. So we talked about the movie 5 Feet Apart, which I now want to go and watch. And we really talked about a lot of things through the lens of learning about yourself through your sickness and your health, and how you adjusted because you didn't have a vision for the future, and how that allowed you to create this wonderful life of a lot of things that we should all be doing, which is communicating, creating agreements, finding your connections that you have in your community online and sharing resources, and, surviving by thriving rather than, just surviving. I love that with your partner and your relationship, you really demonstrate, the two of you, that if it's important enough, you just do it. And when you realized that you were really unwell and Shane moved over, I think that was a huge turning point for you. But then recognizing that you're both going to dive straight in when the time came to doing that transplant was another just huge milestone. And I think, like you said, you've had countless milestones in your life, but one thing that I think all of us can take away from is realizing that being sometimes what people call selfish is not really being selfish. It's allowing everybody for their best joy and to be the most honest. And you've made decisions that work for you, and watching Shane look over and see how happy you are gives so much more joy than a life of servitude, of trying to keep everyone else happy. And I think that's something that what we can all do from today is take away and look at what we can do, because there's always stuff, like you say, that we can't, but there's always something we can. So I love that you're feeling optimistic about it. I'm so happy that you have, you've got these lungs to help, these little guardian lung angels to walk with you. And, and I'm really, really glad that we got to spend some time and learn how to be better people.
You made me sound great. This has been amazing. That was very nice to chat with you girls. Very, very cool.
Amazing. Well, thank you, Sarah, and we look forward to having you back soon.
Yeah, same. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks for listening, bombshells. In order to continue to elevate, subscribe and don't forget to click that little bell so you can get notified every time we have a new badass brunch. Until next time, stay focused, fierce, and fabulous.